Hello again, welcome inside the state capitol on this episode of Outside the Echo Chamber. I'm your host, Rick Lord, and today we are going to be focused on education, obviously a topic that's very important to a lot of people around West Virginia, parents, teachers, students. And with that in mind, we've brought out the big hitters today, Senator Amy Grady, the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and Delegate Joe Statler, who's the vice chair of the House Committee on Education. Thank you both for joining us today. We appreciate your time. I know that a lot of people are wondering, first off, I'll start with you, Senator Grady, because I know you already have some bills working. We've heard about this teacher pay raise bill that's kind of working its way through, and there are some unique concepts to it, the way that it's tied to regional income or housing prices. Just talk a little bit about that bill and what it means and how it works.
So we've always been trying to be open-minded when it comes to teacher pay raises, right? And so we're really looking at places where we have a huge issue, and a lot of our biggest issues in like the areas that are on the boundaries of another state, right. Specifically the Panhandle. We're losing teachers in the Panhandle to Maryland.
It's easy to drive
well,
the
they're
border.
making $20,000 more a year. I don't blame them, you know. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can keep our teachers in West Virginia, but make it a more competitive with the states around. And so we've explored the idea of locality pay in the past, but it didn't seem fair. So whenever you tie it to the income and also like the price, the cost of living in the area, it makes it a little more fair. I'm not sure where it'll go exactly. We've not had a lot of discussions with other members about it, but I'm happy and I'm excited to talk about it, at least get the ball rolling in the discussion phase.
Where did you come up with that idea? Has that been tried before? Has it worked before? Tying it to kind of like the cost of living.
Well, I tell you, it wasn't my idea. It was Senator Tarr's idea.
Okay.
And so he brought it to me and said, what do you think about this? I said, this could possibly work. I can see some people that won't like it because in the middle of West Virginia, they'll look at it as unfair. And we may, and one of the other ideas that we thought might happen is you might have some come from central West Virginia and move to those other counties to get that pay raise, which they're still staying in West Virginia, which is great, right? So it was just thinking outside of the box. A lot of states do different things, and so we're trying to look and see how other states do things to see what we can do to entice teachers to stay here, but also to reward them for staying in districts they're harder.
And to come up with something that's set in stone, that's in code, that is basically not just putting Band-Aids on it year after year, that's a permanent fix.
Yes.
Is that something that you believe the House could get behind, Delegate Statler, pay raises that are tied to something like that?
You know, I will tell you that certainly we have looked at pay raises across the board on the House side, and we put that through, and it gets stuck usually in finance. That's where it'll get stuck at. And yes, we have talked about it, never to the in-depth that they have on the Senate side so far. And when I say talked in depth, I don't mean informally as chairs and vice chairs and members of our committee would look at it. So we certainly will look at it. And I think the concept is Senator Grady has said, has been floated out there before, and especially in the DOH, when the DOH was having so much trouble getting workers in that eastern Panhandle area, that was looked at quite extensively. And of course, there's going to be some issues running in, as she says. I mean, there is going to be people that feels that we're giving an unfair advantage to workers in one area versus the other.
Yeah.
But if you look at the cost of living and you factor in everything that's out there, I'm not so sure that it's an unfair advantage. Sometimes it just costs more to live in those areas, and so you've got to take that into consideration.
It's a challenging issue because it's apples to oranges. West Virginia has a lot of border counties, a lot of states border, and a lot of those states have huge urban cities, and they're getting the funding is different for those states than what we have in West Virginia. So it's not easy. It's not an easy fix, but obviously something that you got to just continue to look at, because as you said, we can't keep losing these teachers. We got to keep the talent in the state.
Yeah, I think we owe it to everybody to give every option a look, you know, and not just keep our eyes focused on doing it one way. I think that we really need to give every single option a look and see, you know, what will work the best, because, I mean, our teachers, we want to keep them, right? We have really great teachers in West Virginia. We want to keep them here, but we're losing so many. And so I hope this is a way we can. I don't know. We'll see where it goes, I guess. You know?
And I would say to the counties that has those bordering, they have to have excess levies in place to even be able to try to control and keep those wages where they can keep their teachers in that county. So they have to spend a lot more money in their county just to get that wage up so they stand a chance of keeping those people. So this is some of the fairness.
And those levies can be tricky because people look at that on the ballot and say, "Oh, you're trying to tax me," even though a levy isn't a tax. That's the way they look at it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so another bill that caught my eye, Senator, was Senate Bill 481, which would allow concealed carry in public schools from off-duty officers. Just talk a little bit about the genesis of that bill, why you believe it's necessary, and what it would entail.
So I'm really cautious when I see any kind of bills that allow concealed carry in our schools. I know we've passed around the idea of arming teachers in the past. I'm not in favor of that at all. But there's always that good level of a feeling of safety and an element of surprise for somebody who maybe might have the worst of intentions. If you have somebody who has been trained, who has a concealed carry permit, who is a former law enforcement officer that has a weapon on them in the schools, that can provide us a peace of mind, for some people. And so I'm not sure exactly how the bill's going to come out or if it's going to pass or however we do that. But I think that if we're going to do it safely, it has to be people that have been trained in the past, and who's better than our law enforcement officers.
There's two ways to look at it, because the counter to that would be like, well, it's a solution looking for a problem because we haven't had any major incidents in West Virginia. So why even bring into account something that could cause a problem? You brought up the other point where, well, sometimes you want to prevent tragedy before it even happens, and this is a way, as long as it's done responsibly, that we could keep kids safe. Have you heard from the other side? Have you heard their concerns and why they believe that bringing any gun into a school might just be a recipe for disaster?
You might be surprised. I haven't heard a single negative comment about that in particular. And you mentioned that we haven't seen anything happen. Thank goodness, right? Thank goodness. But I'm sure every single school that has faced a tragedy like that thought it'll never happen here. And so you want to make sure that we have some safety protocols in place and just some things that help teachers and administrators understand that we have a little peace of mind here in case something should happen. And we always want to do that, right? We always want to look ahead and think prevention instead of reaction.
Could something like that become a slippery slope, though? You don't want to get into a situation where, when we grew up, it was a different era, obviously, and, campuses were open and free. You don't want to get into a situation where schools kind of become prisons, where you're going through metal detectors, where there's sliding gates. It's almost like not conducive to learning in that kind of an experience. Has the House talked about that kind of an issue, or what? Where would you stand on something like arming
we
people
actually
in
have
schools?
a bill running in the House. It's a bill that we had last year, and it does have a few things that we felt that made it better. And it's a bill that more than likely will be one of the first bills that we bring before the Standing Committee on Education as we got the way we're doing it. And I would agree with Senator Grady that it's not that we're trying to make armed camps of our schools, but we're certainly trying to make the schools safer. And if you look at it and look at the history of how this has worked, and I served on the Board of Education in Montague County when it first came up for a grant, one of the first school districts to get a grant to use officers in schools. I will tell you the truth, I was reluctant. For the biggest reason is grant money, unless you find a way to continue that, it sometimes can be an axe. It's not great for you. But it's been a positive experience, I believe, for most cases in our home county. And the officers to the students become so much more familiar with those students, and that makes those students feel at ease.
Builds a relationship.
It builds a relationship even on outside the school, to where they're not apprehensive of an officer just because they see an officer coming around. And I believe the bill that Senator Grady has, I have looked at that on the Senate side, and like I say, I like our bill a little bit better, but there's nothing says we can't start both these bills, and at some point they make a marriage and get something out. And I believe, I'm like Senator Grady, over the summer and even during session now, I've had people coming up especially in the law enforcement area saying, well, do this to the bill or do that to the bill, and they are very supportive of it. Mm-hmm. And so families are. And what we really like about this, it doesn't mandate the counties to have to do anything. It is clearly up to the counties to make that decision. And what I like is, quite possibly, if they don't have the money, and say you're a retired law enforcement officer and you want to spend some time at that school, there is nothing, I don't believe, in either one of these bills, as long as you got the training and the criteria is set
And that's the
forth.
important part. You want to make sure that everything's vetted and that
And they got to continue that training. I believe in both bills.
They do.
It's not something it's just a one and done. So they could foreseeably, if you're out there, you could volunteer to do it. And think about it. You don't have to have an officer in the school during the whole school day and hours, because people don't know. They don't know when that person is going to be available and in that school. And so I think there's a lot of beauty to these bills that's out there that can be help to correct some of these issues, and God forbid that they're ever needed.
Right.
But if they are, then they may be in
And
place.
a lot of people believe that that's why places like schools are targeted, because it's a soft target.
Exactly.
Because they know that they won't face any resistance.
Yeah, and if I may, Rick, add to that just a little bit. The sheriff's departments, I know that in my area, have been working really hard with us as well on the bill, and have even mentioned, that having their deputies come by and requiring them to serve 2 hours in a school in a day, so they can get to know the community members, get to know the schools, all the layouts of the schools, just to kind of help everybody understand, in case something would happen.
Sure.
And if we think about some of the situations our kids grow up in now, some of our students in our schools, the only interaction they have with police is a negative one. Sometimes the only interaction, they remember they came into my home because something happened with my mom and dad, right? And so they have that negative. So this could be something that could be a positive influence on their lives too. So it's a lot more than just safety with a gun. It's a lot of building relationships and helping our children to understand that our police officers are there to help.
Now, last year during session, you were working on some bills that dealt with discipline in schools, and the way that kids are allowed to be disciplined. Do you foresee anything like that coming up this year in terms of just tweaking that or expanding it at all?
I plan to run the bill that we had last year with a few minor changes. I'm not 100% sure on what those changes are going to be yet, but I'm going back and forth on it. It's still a number one issue. We still talk to teachers every single day, and that's the number one thing that they have concerns about and they really want help with. When it didn't pass last year, I was a little upset and frustrated because we worked so hard on it, but the conversations that have come out since then have been really great. I've had mental health providers and mental health organizations from across the nation reach out and say, hey, how can we help? And so some school districts have mental health organizations that come in or contract with them, do telehealth services. There's a lot of different options to help with behavioral health for our students that will still cost funding, possibly, but it can be a little bit of a lighter load than what we were expecting. We still have to provide that support for that student, but give the teachers what they need to feel like they can actually do what they were trained to do. That's the biggest issue.
Sure.
Is, teachers are expected to do so much more than just teach. But we're held accountable for our test scores, but 80% of our day is not teaching. And we've really got to change that if we want to see a positive impact on educational outcomes.
And this is so hard because you can't legislate or police behavior, and a lot of this is tied into parenting. And teachers are kind of de facto caretakers during the day, but they're not parents. And so, how do you work with the parents? How do you make sure that it's like symbiosis, so that everyone's on the same page? You can't you can't take over someone's kid. I mean, eventually it has to happen at the home.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think if we had the answer to that, 99% of our problems would be taken care of.
Yes, sir.
And I do believe that is probably the weakest link in the chain that's going on now is parents. It's not setting expectations for these students as they go home or as they're home. And the teachers are very limited in what they can do. Senator Grady had us off-site at the first or second day in interims, and we went to a site chair in Charleston, and we looked at some issues that they were doing there, and it was eye-opening to see what those teachers, that's what you got to do. You got to go into the belly of the beast to actually see. Senator Grady has that on me because I am not a teacher, never have been. I served on the Board of Education, and that just makes me think I might know something about education. It doesn't mean I know anything.
You know enough to be dangerous.
I know enough to be dangerous, but I will say that Senator Grady lives the life and there every day, and especially at the elementary level. And, there's nothing that will encompass experience. But these teachers out there, I think if we actually had a good survey, we would find that most teachers across the state of West Virginia that this disciplinary issue is more important to them than pay. Now, I know there's going to be people want to jump out at me and say, oh, no, pay. But, I will tell you, when I talk to these teachers, you hear the stories of being headbutted. You hear the stories about bruises and things that they're receiving from this, from children, that when they try to control them, and they clearly said at that meeting, they can't lay hands upon these students. I couldn't handle that myself. I just don't know how they can do it day in and day out.
Well, that's the challenge. Give them more money and make more peaceful classrooms, and then everybody's happy.
Well, here's the thing. We're talking about 1% of the kids,
sure.
right? So with these truly violent behaviors, it's about 1% of the students.
Right.
And I'll be frank and honest. Some of these students have issues that public school just isn't built to handle.
Yeah.
So we've got to find other solutions for them. But I think that our focus is wrong. We've really got to focus on the other 99%. Because it's not fair to them that their education is being affected by one student. I'm not saying toss that student to the side, Rick. Absolutely not.
Sure.
But we really have to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do.
And there's no more valuable resource than our children. So
yes.
you want to make sure that
we got to put all of our effort into
they're growing up in a safe and encouraging environment.
Yes.
Lastly, I know that a lot of the hot button topics in education come from what's going on in our schools, the curriculum that's being taught. We've heard a lot about those buzzwords or buzz phrases or buzz initials like CRT in classrooms. Do you expect any of that type of legislation to come up in terms of transparency and making sure that we're sticking to the curriculum and that parents know what's being taught in their schools?
We passed a bill a few years ago. It was actually my bill that was a transparency bill that allows for parents to request to see the curriculum. It gives them a certain time period that has to be produced. And the Department of Education has given us reports on that every single year, and it's very few parents have requested across the state to see the curriculum. So if that's the case, to me, I don't feel like it's that big of an issue.
Right.
Because if it was a big issue, you would see more requests from parents. That was the reason that we passed that bill, was because we wanted more transparency.
And that's what the other side says,
Yeah.
is this isn't happening, so what's the problem?
So it's there, it's there, and things could be happening. I'm not going to say they're not, because I've heard stories from parents on my own, not necessarily in the curriculum, but just in conversations and different things that happen within the school. But I think sometimes we have to look at the districts, and see if they're handling the issue, and if they're not, then we can help. But I'm against putting everything in state code when it comes to education. I think sometimes we just have to let smaller districts really, really take care of themselves. One district might have an issue and another might not. And so I'm really apprehensive about it, just because we have that transparency bill, and we have seen very little requests from parents about looking at the curriculum. So it can't be that big of an issue right now, So.
All right. Well, thank you both for your time today. We appreciate you stopping by, talking about education, obviously a topic that's very, very vitally important to the state. So I know you'll have your work cut out for you over the next couple of months, but we'll check back in as session rolls on. I know it's always hunky-dory in the first few days. Once we get toward crossover day, we'll see how things are working out. I always believe that politics work on and thrive on conflict, so maybe you get some healthy debate going on here and make sure that things
we love healthy debate.
Yes.
I was going to say, they're not conflicts, they're just difference of opinions.
Right.
And as the system works through, you want difference of opinion, because our difference of opinions, if you're doing your job correctly, you try to find a happy medium that we all can live with, that will improve the system, and that's what we look for.
All right, Delegate Joe Statler, Senator Amy Grady, thank you, and we'll be right back with more Outside the Echo Chamber, talking with the president of the West Virginia AFT right after this.
Are you ready to unlock a future filled with remarkable pay, unbeatable benefits, and unparalleled satisfaction? Imagine embarking on a journey that offers you a college-level education without the weight of debt, all while earning a steady income. Look no further than the West Virginia Building and Construction Trades Apprenticeship Programs. Join us, and together, let's build a future that's brighter and stronger. Go to ACT-WV.org to apply today. The West Virginia Building and Construction Trades, where the future is forged.
Welcome back inside the state capitol and outside the echo chamber. Joining me now is the president of the AFT of West Virginia, Kristie Skidmore, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, thank you for having me.
Obviously, a lot of talk about education this session and teachers with pay raises. I know that AFT always comes in with their own agenda and hoping to get things done, talking to legislators. Just briefly give us a synopsis of what you hope to get accomplished during this session and what you hope to get done for teachers over the next 60 days.
So during this session, we're hoping one of the biggest things that our members and all public employees are concerned about at this point is stabilizing PEIA. For years that has been underfunded, and we're hoping that at some point, sometime in the near future, we can find funding to stabilize it and go forward with better benefits for our employees who have often opted for, lower pay for better benefits.
Yeah.
So.
And that's always been the challenge, is how to find out a way to get it done permanently, how to have a permanent fix, allocate those monies year after year so that you know it's there. It seems over the last 5-10 years, it's almost just been like Band-Aids and paper clips, and that's not going to get it done.
Well, correct, and let's not forget that our retirees don't have a COLA, and so if they're facing increased costs to PEIA, it could be very detrimental to them. So.
We talked to Senator Amy Grady. She's trying to get a bill passed that would tie teacher pay raises to almost like a cost of living, housing prices, regional pricing. We spoke briefly off camera about that. I mean, it seems like that might be something good for border counties to keep people from crossing the border, but it might do a disservice to some of the inner rural counties in West Virginia. I mean, your initial thoughts on something like that, and I know that you probably haven't seen the legislation yet, but is that something that you might be able to get behind, or that you would have to see it and see, as they always say, the devil's in the details?
Right, and our staff will be perusing that bill as quickly as possible. And you're right. While we appreciate the effort to find a pay raise and find, again, some stability with that pay raise, yes, our concerns would be rural areas. If it's tied to, housing, then, we already know that border states are difficult to attract teachers, but so are rural areas. So
it's a statewide problem.
Exactly. Yes, and we need to fix it statewide.
So what are some of the things that you think can get done or that should get done, or what will you be pushing this session?
Well, we'll be looking to, again, our emphasis is stabilizing PEIA. That's what we're hearing from our members. They're very concerned about that. We also, we've been working with Senator Grady some on some discipline bills and issues. Our staff reps are inundated with calls from education employees, teachers, and service personnel that are suffering at the hands of students in behavior issues.
Employee safety.
Well, it's employee safety. And let me be clear, I personally believe that we need to work to provide resources to change behavior, right? Punishment is one thing, removing them from the classroom so instruction can go on, have instruction that's not continually disruptive, but we need to work to change the behavior. Don't forget, from the time I started teaching 30 years ago, I realized these students, these small children, become adults. So we need to prepare them for their adult world. We need resources to not just give teachers and service personnel more to do in the classroom, but try to help these children who come, a lot of them come from traumatic backgrounds. We're seeing evidence from the opioid epidemic that we've been battling in this state for a while now. So that's one of our biggest issues as well.
Senator Grady said she is going to revive the bill that didn't get through last year, the school discipline bill, maybe some minor tweaks to it, but she did say that was a big issue.
And we appreciate her for putting the effort into that.
It's also a very challenging issue because while teachers are, as I mentioned, her de facto caretakers, so to speak, they're not the parents, and a lot of it goes back to parenting. And you can't control what goes on inside those homes.
That's absolutely correct. And lots of times we're tasked with making up the differences. I mean, look, we have great-grandparents raising students. I've seen that firsthand. It's a very difficult situation. And teachers and school education employees, from bus drivers to cooks to aides, everyone tries to fill in the gaps, and it's a very difficult situation.
So other than stabilizing PEIA, giving teachers more money, pay raises, is there anything else that can be done to try to retain these teachers, because we are losing talent, and it's a problem that's only going to get worse before it gets better. So how do we keep the talent in state? How do we keep teachers here, other than the obvious, which is throw money at them? I mean, but sometimes if you don't have the money, are there other creative ways to keep them here in West Virginia?
I'm glad you asked. a big issue we deal with is respect. When we have to come back to the table year after year after year and ask for the things, to attract and retain teachers, this is a great state. It's a beautiful state. Those of us who live here love this state, but we also have a strong tradition of taking care of each other, right? So let's do what's right to attract and retain teachers.
Let's respect them. Let's respect them for what they do.
Well, yeah, respect them is important.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, if they can feel like they're respected, like they're getting the attention they deserve and the respect they deserve, and people understand what they do. And
that's just it. Part of respect is bringing those stakeholders to the table to ask them to help with solutions to problems.
Yeah. Give me your vision of what a successful session from the AFT standpoint would look like over the next 60 days. What can get done, what should get done, what do you hope to get done?
Again, stabilize PEIA, pay raise would be great, and let's work on employee safety and respect.
All right, Kristie Skidmore, thank you so much for joining us, the new president of the West Virginia AFT, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to you over the next 60 days to see how this is progressing and seeing the work that's getting done.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. And stay with us. Yeah, of course. Right after this, we'll be speaking with Glenville State University President Mark Manchin as Outside the Echo Chamber continues. The West Virginia Adult Education Center has free resources to help you get your GED, learn new job skills, earn workplace certifications, and learn English as a second language. No matter where you're starting from, we're here to help. With locations all across the state, changing your life has never been easier. Learn, train, succeed, and earn more money today by visiting our website at freegedwv.com. Welcome back inside the state capitol, talking about education today, and it just so happens to also be Glenville State Day at
Yes,
the Capitol, so it is appropriate to be speaking with the president of the university, Dr. Mark Manchin. Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you, Rick. I always enjoy being with you. We've, over the years, been together, and we've had the opportunity to speak on a number of different issues, but education is my passion. I know it means a lot to you, so I'm excited about today.
You're awesome, man. Just wind you up and let you go, right? It is the 153rd anniversary of the school this year as well, so talk a little bit about what 2025 means for Glenville State.
Let's go back.
By the way, you don't look a day over 100 as a school.
Well, that's. I thought you were going to talk about me.
No, you're. I think we'll both be happy to get to 100.
Yeah, isn't that true? But let's go back 153 years ago,
okay.
Rick. Glenville State, at the time, was called a normal school.
Sure.
Which was in preparation for teachers. One of the great needs, even at that time, in the state. And we were created as a normal school for teachers. And over the years, over the last 75, 100 years, we were pretty much known as a teacher's college. Over these last 5 to 10 years, we continue to grow some of the neat things we're doing, not only in education, which is very critical. Two greatest needs in the state of West Virginia right now is our teachers and nurses.
Yeah.
We are well positioned now for both of those at Glenville State University.
Let me talk a bit about that, because recently, just a few months ago, I believe it was in November, you created or retweaked a program in health sciences with rural healthcare in mind. Talk a little bit about that program and what it might mean for West Virginia.
Well, Rick, let me. In order to really, my passion and our passion at Glenville State University, I grew up in a small community called Farmington, West Virginia, up in Marion County, and my family had a clinic. And as a young boy, I was able to be up there on many different occasions and saw the coal miners with black lung and people who were really struggling with health care in the rural parts of our state, or rural parts of Marion and Mon County, who came to the clinic. And those are the days before the interstate. It was so important. And I watched that, and that had an impact on me to this day. Rural health care, particularly in what you can say what you want to, but the entire state of West Virginia is rural. We're sitting in Charleston, but basically rural West Virginia. But you don't get much more rural than Gilmer County and that part of the state, central West Virginia. And I've watched, if you have a crisis, if you have a medical emergency, chances are you will not survive. So what we're doing, and we found, Rick, that if you train them in an area, they have a tendency to stay. We have a number of students in the Braxton County, Gilmer County, Webster County, Lewis County, Upshur, and all that, the Roane County, Clay County, that whole area. But if they go to Charleston, come down here to go to school, or go north to either Fairmont or Morgantown, they have a tendency to stay up there. So what we've done is we're creating a health science last year the Department of Health Sciences. We have a dean, and we are putting an emphasis on rural health care in West Virginia, and particularly central West Virginia, and how critical that is. We have last year, and we are in the process of building a brand new health and fitness complex where the old stadium used to be at Glenville.
Yeah.
That will have state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art building that will be able to provide the necessary resources, the necessary instruction, technology necessary to teach our young men and women in a number of concentrations. Right now, we are in the process this fall. We'll have pre-med, concentration in pre-med, pre-dental, which is critical, physical therapy, all of these are classes, and working on articulation agreements with other universities and colleges, not only in West Virginia, literally as we speak, that those, when they graduate with an undergraduate degree, for example, pre-med, we work very closely with the osteopathic school, they will accept our students, pre-dental, and many universities, not only in the state of West Virginia, but nationally, that will accept our students with our articulation agreement, and these young men and women will be able to go on and get further education. It's just, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be in a position, Rick, of touching people's lives in such a touching way.
And this is really a microcosm of what's going on at Glenville, this expansion and growing. You're seeing schools around the country that are hemorrhaging enrollment. They're losing students, losing money, losing funding. You guys, enrollment up again 10%. What are you doing right at Glenville State?
Well, I think one of the things we've done is now that we're a university, we can have master's level programs. We have nearly 100 in our MBA program that we never had 3 years ago. So that all counts in your count.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Our MBA program, which we're growing, now has concentrations in AI, artificial intelligence, that you can get 12 hours and have a concentration on your transcripts. Then once you graduate, and let me tell you what, AI or cybersecurity, which we have a
huge.
Those are now concentrations that we are able to offer coming this fall.
Yeah.
With a master's at MBA in artificial intelligence, or in cybersecurity, or in healthcare administration. Those are some of the areas that we're providing a concentration with 12 hours. It's a 36-hour program, but it's convenient, it's cost-effective, and it's cutting edge.
Yeah.
And
always looking forward.
It's always looking forward. So that's what we attribute to our growth. We're going to continue to grow. We got to go where the students are. We got to go with their needs, and we're able to. We have a healthcare task force that reviews and looks at the future. We just don't look at the present. If you look at the present, you're falling behind.
Yeah.
We're looking towards the future. What are the jobs? What is necessary? Certainly healthcare, all in a myriad of different ways in healthcare, but also in education. We still need teachers. There's over 2,500 teachers in the classroom in the state of West Virginia that aren't certified to teach in the area that they're teaching. No. We have to do a better job, and this is my 48th year, Rick, in education.
Now, what are some of the challenges that you face? Obviously, a state like West Virginia, dominated by the two big schools, West Virginia University, Morgantown, Marshall, and Huntington. And then you have that second tier where there are a lot of schools like Fairmont State, Glenville State, Concord, the Division II schools throughout the state. How do you focus on what you do best and dominate that sphere?
Well, and that's an excellent question. And you're right, they're out there. I grew up in Marion County, Fairmont State, which is a fine college, and we have a great relationship with Marshall University. Our nursing program, we have an agreement between Marshall and Glenville to provide the BSN, Bachelor in Science in Nursing. So that's very, very important. But we want to carve our own niche.
Sure.
First of all, we're a small college. We look at three basic areas, Rick. I look at health in three buckets when we talk to a parent. We have one, health and safety of our students, of our employees. That's critical. That's the most important thing. We're a small college in a very rural part of the state of West Virginia, very bucolic, trees, very beautiful. If you don't want to go to Morgantown, if you don't want to go to Huntington, or if you don't want to go to a large major university, Glenville's the place for you. It's quiet, it's safe. You can walk across campus. We're going to spend $3 million over the next year on upgrading our safety. Second, you get a good quality education. You're going to get a good. Right now, being with our university status, not only can you get an undergraduate degree in the health sciences or in criminal justice, you can go on and be successful. We have a master's level program now in criminal justice that you can go on and work at the FBI or a number or in the law school. And of course, you know, all of in the masters and the undergraduate, and of course the excitement. You want to have fun. I like to joke with my students. I walk across campus all the time and interact with them. I get one of the young guys, come here, buddy. I'll say, look across that campus. And he'll go, I said, look across that campus. What do you see? He said, I don't know what. Your future wife's walking across there right now. That's where I met my wife at college.
Sure.
Most beautiful woman I've ever saw. And I said, your future wife's walking across there. And the girls, your future husband's walking across there. About half, when they all come back, they'll say, where'd you meet your wife or your husband? They met him at college. Now, it may be your future ex-wife or your future ex-husband. Unfortunately, that happens occasionally. We laugh about that.
Well, maybe you need a law school, get some divorce lawyers out of Glenville State.
But we want to have a good time while they're there, and I think we've been successful. And I think, in answer to your original question, why are we doing so well? I think we're giving them what they need and what they want. We're meeting them where they are, and we're growing our online courses. 30 years ago, online probably not that big. I was never a great advocate, but I'm recognizing some of your largest universities. In fact, your largest universities in the United States right now are online.
Right.
Yeah, University of Phoenix, Southern New Hampshire, all of these you're seeing. They may have a campus, but they have 40, 50, 60, 100,000 students. So we're going to grow our online. All of our master's programs right now are online. Many of our undergraduate programs are online because we recognize that not everybody can physically get. And after COVID, that really accelerated some of the online programs and some of the neat things we're doing. So we're excited about where we're going, and I think you put all that together in a small college atmosphere, and particularly all you have to do is watch TV, Rick. You know that. The dangers in large cities or large campuses.
Absolutely.
And we sell how important it is to be safe, to have a good quality education, but have a good time. We're doing some major renovations.
And let's get into that because I want to talk about, we've talked about expansion, renovating, building. All of that takes money. And we're in the middle of the Day of Giving, which is now basically
I'm glad you brought
a week of giving. In correlation to the 153rd anniversary, just talk a little bit about that fundraiser, what it means to the school, and how much you've been able to bring in and what it's been able to do.
Well, it's critical. Rick, let's not lose sight of the fact that every university, every college, it's a business as well as it is an educational institution. It's a business. And I am responsible. What my job is as president is a resource allocator. The application is our professors and all our employees and our students. That's at the application stage. Mine's at the resource stage. I provide resources, give the direction. So Day of Giving is critical to Glenville. What is it to every university? Last couple of years, we raised over $1 million. $1 million. Now, granted, half of that, or some of that, came from one of the greatest benefactors any university could have, and that's Ike Morris and the Morris family. They're incredible. They have been so great to us. But we were able to raise nearly $600,000, which, standing alone, other than Marshall and WVU, we would be the highest. So how people have supported Glenville, and what I've found, Rick, is since I became president, is the passion that people have. There many of them are rural. Many of our students are rural. From the
it's an extension of you.
Well, kind of. I was blessed.
You're not just selling the school; you're selling yourself in many ways.
But I was blessed to be able to travel and do a lot of things because of my family. But yes, I grew up and went to in Cousin Joe, United States Senator. We all grew up in a small little community called Farmington, and that's the values that we bring. That's what we bring here now. I see these kids, and a lot of them, and not only we have some kids from some metropolitan areas, but vast majority are Clay County, Roane County, Gilmer County, small communities. And if they didn't get an education at Glenville, they would not get an education at all. So that's exciting. That's the passion that we bring. We recognize that we are at a precipice that if we don't intervene and help these students, a lot of people won't. Sure. So that's so exciting, and to think it was instilled in me as a young boy, make a difference, and what greater gift can any of us give than giving somebody a future or a hope or something that they can grasp onto that perhaps they don't have right now. Like I said, 70% of our kids are rural. Nearly 80% are lower socioeconomic. So it's critical that we raise money.
Yeah, 94% are on some sort of financial aid.
Absolutely, 94%. And what this allows us to do, a student who otherwise would not have an opportunity to get an education and have a future, and though it's no guarantee,
Right.
there's a good chance. There's almost a guarantee, Rick, that if they don't get a good quality education today, in today's society, they got no chance. But in the future, if we can give them a good, solid education.
Well, you've got me sold.
Hey,
Hey,
we're on, buddy.
you got me sold. If I hadn't already got my degree from Arizona State, I'd be heading up to Glenville.
Well, there you
right
go.
now. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's always great to talk to you.
It's always, and Rick, I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course.
And you've always been a good friend of mine and ours. And we have the opportunity to speak here, and I'm looking forward to continue working with you over the future.
Best of luck. We'll talk next year. All right. All right.
Well, let's not wait till next year.
All right. Well, I mean, on this show, we'll talk during next time. Dr. Mark Manchin, president of Glenville State University, thank you for your time. We also want to thank our other guests today, Kristie Skidmore, the president of the West Virginia AFT, Delegate Joe Statler, the House Vice Chair of the Education Committee, and Education Chair Senator Annie Grady from the Senate. But most of all, we want to thank you for joining us on Outside the Echo Chamber as we continue to discuss the topics that are important to you and your family. Until next time, I'm Rick Lord. Take care.